My beloved child. Listen carefully, because what I am about to reveal is not loud, not dramatic, and not obvious at first glance, yet it has been quietly shaping your emotions, your decisions, and your silence for a very long time. You feel something is off, but you cannot explain it without doubting yourself. That confusion is not an accident. It is designed. There is a person in your life who smiles at the right moments, speaks the right words, and shows care exactly when you are about to pull away. They know when to come close and when to disappear. They know when to give you hope and when to leave you waiting. This is not love. This is not fate. This is emotional misdirection. They are not breaking you in one loud moment. They are slowly rearranging your feelings until you no longer trust your own instincts. Every time you sense distance, they pull you back with warmth. Every time you seek clarity, they give you confusion wrapped in kindness. And because it never feels extreme, you keep telling yourself it must be normal. That is how the trap stays invisible. That is how the fooling begins, quietly, gently, and repeatedly. There is something unsettling you must understand right now, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. This person does not act from chaos. They act from calculation. They study your reactions even when they pretend not to care. They notice what makes you soften and what makes you afraid of losing them. When you express pain, they listen just enough to keep you attached, but never enough to truly change. They remember your vulnerabilities and use them as timing tools. When you grow stronger, they suddenly become affectionate. When you grow tired, they suddenly become distant. This pattern is not coincidence. It is control without commands. They never tell you what to do, yet you find yourself adjusting, waiting, and hoping. That is the most dangerous kind of influence, because it makes you feel like everything is your choice. You are not being held by force. You are being held by expectation. And the intention behind this is simple but unsettling. They want access to your emotions without responsibility for your well-being. They want the comfort of your presence without the effort of real commitment. They want to feel powerful by being needed, not by being genuine. Pay attention now, because this is where most people look away. This person benefits from your emotional investment, but they do not invest in your emotional safety. They enjoy being the center of your thoughts, yet they avoid being accountable for your tears. They like knowing they matter to you, but they resist showing that you truly matter to them. When you ask for clarity, they say you are overthinking. When you ask for consistency, they say you are asking too much. Slowly, you begin to shrink your needs to keep the peace. That is not maturity. That is emotional erosion. Their intention is not to build a future with you. Their intention is to keep a door open, always. A door they can walk through when they need comfort, validation, or escape from their own emptiness. You are not their destination. You are their refuge. And refuges are used, not chosen. Now hear this part without fear, but with honesty. If they truly valued you, your presence would bring stability, not anxiety. Your questions would lead to answers, not silence. Your emotions would be handled with care, not strategy. Love does not keep you guessing. Love does not make you feel replaceable on calm days and special on lonely nights. What you are experiencing is emotional inconsistency disguised as depth. It feels intense because uncertainty amplifies emotion. Your heart keeps working harder because it is never allowed to rest. That is the intention. A tired heart clings more easily. A confused mind doubts itself. And when you finally sense something is wrong, they offer just enough reassurance to reset the cycle. This is not because they are evil. It is because they are empty in places they refuse to heal. Instead of fixing themselves, they borrow pieces of you. Let this truth land gently but firmly. You are not weak for caring. You are not foolish for hoping. You are not wrong for wanting clarity, security, and truth. The mistake was not loving. The mistake was believing that inconsistency was depth and mystery was meaning. This person is fooling you emotionally, not because you are blind, but because you are kind. And their intention, whether they admit it or not, is to keep that kindness available without earning it. What happens next depends on what you choose to see. Awareness changes the balance. Once you stop explaining their behavior and start observing it, the illusion begins to crack. And when that happens, everything they relied on starts to weaken. This is only the beginning. There is a moment coming closer to you than you realize, a moment when the silence between you and this person will start speaking louder than their words. You will notice how conversations end without resolution, how promises float without landing, how reassurance feels temporary, like a borrowed blanket that never fully warms you. This is not accidental. This is where emotional manipulation hides best, in the pauses, in the delays, in the unfinished sentences. They keep things undefined because definition creates responsibility. As long as everything stays vague, they can deny intention and avoid consequence. You feel emotionally invested, yet emotionally unsure, and that imbalance keeps you tethered. They know you replay moments in your mind, searching for meaning. They know you blame timing, circumstances, or yourself. And while you are busy understanding them, they are quietly enjoying the comfort of your attention without committing to your peace. What you must understand now is subtle but powerful. This person feeds on emotional availability without offering emotional presence. They are there when it suits them, absent when it requires effort. Their care comes in waves, never steady, never reliable. When you pull away, they sense it immediately and return with intensity. When you relax, they retreat again. This push and pull is not confusion on their part. It is regulation. They are regulating how close you get, how much you expect, how deeply you question. Their intention is to stay important in your life while remaining unbound by obligation. They want to matter without being accountable. That is why they give you just enough to stay, but never enough to feel secure. Stability would free you. Uncertainty keeps you attached. Notice how your standards slowly shifted without you realizing it. Things that once felt unacceptable now feel normal. Delays feel understandable. Mixed signals feel complex. Emotional distance feels temporary. This is not growth. This is conditioning. You adapted not because it felt right, but because you wanted to preserve the connection. They did not meet you halfway. They waited for you to walk further toward them. And each step you took, they learned how much you were willing to tolerate. Their intention is not to harm you openly. Their intention is to keep you available, emotionally responsive, and quietly hoping. Hope is their strongest leverage. As long as you believe something better is coming, you will keep investing. Here is the truth that changes everything if you let it. Genuine care brings clarity. Real intention creates consistency. Someone who values you does not make you question your place in their life. They do not disappear when emotions deepen. They do not become distant when vulnerability appears. If you feel anxious more than you feel safe, if you feel confused more than you feel calm, that is not chemistry. That is imbalance. And imbalance always benefits the one who cares less. Their intention has never been to meet you where you stand. Their intention has been to keep you standing where they can reach you when they need something you provide: attention, validation, emotional support, or reassurance. This is the moment where awareness begins to turn into power. Once you stop chasing explanations and start watching patterns, the fog lifts. You see that effort is selective, affection is timed, and presence is conditional. That realization may feel heavy at first, but it is also freeing. Because nothing has been wrong with you. You are responding naturally to something that was never stable. And once you see that, the emotional hold starts to weaken. Not all at once, but steadily. The more clearly you see their intention, the less control it has over you. And what comes next will challenge everything you believed about this connection. Something important begins to shift the moment you stop waiting for them to change and start questioning why you were asked to endure so much in the first place. This is the phase where clarity feels uncomfortable, because it removes the illusion that kept you emotionally busy. You realize that your loyalty was never matched with the same depth of intention. You gave consistency to someone who survived on inconsistency. You offered emotional honesty to someone who survived on emotional ambiguity. And now, the biggest revelation starts to surface. They never planned to lose you, but they never planned to fully choose you either. Their intention was to keep you suspended in possibility. Not moving forward. Not walking away. Just close enough to serve a purpose, but never close enough to demand responsibility. At this stage, you may notice something deeply unsettling. When you emotionally pull back, they suddenly sense it without you saying a word. They check in. They soften their tone. They remind you of memories, promises, or moments that once felt meaningful. This is not coincidence. This is response. They are reacting to the loss of control, not the pain of losing you. When they felt secure in your attachment, effort was minimal. When they sense distance, effort increases. That contrast alone exposes intention. True care remains steady regardless of fear. Strategic care only appears when something is at risk. And what they fear losing is not you as a person, but what you provide emotionally. Here is where many people misunderstand themselves. You may feel guilty for changing. You may feel cold for becoming quieter. You may feel wrong for no longer explaining yourself. But this is not cruelty. This is self-respect waking up. You are not becoming distant. You are becoming aware. Awareness feels like detachment because it removes emotional fog. You stop filling gaps they created. You stop justifying silence they normalized. You stop chasing clarity they avoided. And in doing so, you break the cycle they depended on. Their intention worked only as long as you kept hoping instead of observing. Once you observe, the power shifts. Understand this deeply. People who genuinely value you do not feel threatened by your growth. They do not feel exposed by your questions. They do not feel uncomfortable when you ask for consistency. If someone reacts defensively to your need for clarity, it is because clarity removes their advantage. This person thrived in emotional gray areas. They hid their intention behind charm, timing, and selective vulnerability. They shared just enough of themselves to feel real, but not enough to be accountable. And now that you see this, their words begin to lose weight. Their actions become louder. Silence becomes information. Distance becomes truth. What you are experiencing now is not the end of something meaningful. It is the end of something misleading. And that distinction matters more than you realize. You are not losing a connection. You are shedding confusion. You are not walking away from love. You are walking toward emotional stability. This stage feels heavy because it demands honesty with yourself. But it also carries a quiet strength. Because once you stop being emotionally available to someone who never intended to meet you fully, space opens up for something real. And what comes next will reveal why this had to be seen, not sooner, not later, but exactly now. There comes a quiet hour when the noise inside you settles, and in that stillness, a truth rises without anger, without drama, just clarity. You finally see that the connection survived not because it was strong, but because you kept carrying it alone. You were the one adjusting your expectations, translating their silence, softening their absence. They never asked you to stay openly, yet they never let you leave freely. That contradiction was the signal you ignored for too long. Their intention was never to walk beside you. It was to remain slightly ahead, so you would keep following. Once you stopped chasing the version of them you hoped they would become, you recognized the version they consistently showed you. And consistency, not words, reveals truth. At this point, something strange happens inside you. The urge to explain yourself fades. The need for validation weakens. You no longer feel the same pull to prove your worth or clarify your feelings. This is not because you stopped caring. It is because you stopped negotiating your value. They may sense this shift and respond with concern, affection, or sudden depth. But now, you notice the timing. You notice how effort appears only when control feels threatened. That awareness changes how everything lands. What once felt powerful now feels predictable. What once felt emotional now feels rehearsed. Their intention loses its grip when you stop responding the way they expected. You also begin to understand that emotional attachment does not always mean emotional safety. You can feel deeply connected to someone who is not capable of holding you with care. You can miss someone who was never truly present. This realization does not erase the memories, but it reframes them. You see how often you waited. How often you hoped. How often you accepted less than clarity because you believed patience would be rewarded. Their intention relied on that patience. As long as you waited, they never had to decide. As long as you stayed, they never had to change. Indecision was their shelter, and your loyalty was the cost. Now notice how your energy begins to return to you. Your thoughts slow down. Your emotions feel less reactive. You stop scanning for signals and start listening to your own responses. Peace feels unfamiliar at first because chaos had become normal. But peace does not ask you to shrink. It does not ask you to doubt yourself. It does not keep you guessing. The absence of emotional tension reveals how heavy the connection truly was. And in that lightness, you understand something important. What drained you was not love. It was uncertainty. Their intention thrived on emotional imbalance, and balance is what finally frees you. This is where the narrative changes, not loudly, but permanently. You are no longer waiting for clarity from them, because you created it within yourself. You are no longer hoping for consistency, because you chose it for your own life. The person who once held emotional power over you now feels distant, not because they changed, but because you did. And that is the quiet ending they never prepared for. When someone loses access to your emotional energy, their influence fades. What remains is understanding, strength, and space. And in that space, something far more real is preparing to enter. There is a final realization that arrives not with pain, but with calm, and it changes how you remember everything. You see that the connection was never meant to last in the form you imagined, because it was built on imbalance from the start. You were offering depth to someone who preferred control. You were offering honesty to someone who preferred convenience. Once this becomes clear, the emotional fog lifts completely. You stop romanticizing the confusion. You stop excusing the inconsistency. You stop waiting for closure from someone who benefited from keeping things unfinished. Their intention was never aligned with your emotional truth, and that misalignment is what exhausted you, not love itself. Now you understand why they struggled when you became quieter, calmer, and less reactive. Your silence was not emptiness. It was independence. When you stopped explaining your feelings repeatedly, they lost the leverage that came from your vulnerability. When you stopped chasing reassurance, they lost the reassurance of being needed. This is the part they never anticipated. They expected your attachment to remain unchanged, even as their effort stayed minimal. They expected you to stay emotionally open while they stayed emotionally guarded. But growth changes dynamics. And once you grew, their influence weakened naturally. You may reflect now and realize something important. The moments that felt intense were often moments of uncertainty. The moments that felt addictive were moments of emotional inconsistency. True connection does not create emotional hunger. It creates emotional nourishment. What kept you attached was not depth, but unpredictability. Their intention relied on emotional contrast, warmth followed by distance, attention followed by silence. That contrast kept your mind engaged and your heart unsettled. Once the pattern is seen clearly, it loses its power. Awareness dissolves illusion faster than confrontation ever could. This is also the moment where self-trust returns. You begin to trust your instincts again. You realize that the discomfort you felt early on was not insecurity. It was intuition. You ignored it because you wanted the connection to be real. There is no shame in that. Hope does not make you weak. But staying aware now makes you strong. You no longer question whether you asked for too much. You see that you asked the wrong person. Someone who truly values you would never make you feel like clarity was a burden. The chapter closes quietly, without dramatic endings or final conversations. It closes because you no longer participate in something that costs you your peace. And that is the most powerful ending of all. Their intention fades the moment you reclaim your emotional energy. What remains is a deeper understanding of yourself, your boundaries, and your worth. And with that understanding comes something rare and real. Emotional freedom. There is a moment when you realize that nothing is missing anymore, and that realization feels almost unfamiliar. You are no longer waiting for a message to change your mood. You are no longer reading meaning into silence. You are no longer hoping that today will be different. This calm did not come from them finally understanding you. It came from you finally understanding yourself. You see now that emotional peace does not arrive through effort or endurance. It arrives through alignment. And that alignment was never present here. Their intention required you to stay emotionally alert, always available, always responsive. Your peace removes that advantage completely. You begin to see how much emotional space you were occupying for someone who gave you fragments in return. That space slowly returns to you. Your thoughts feel clearer. Your emotions feel grounded. You stop replaying conversations because there is nothing left to solve. The answers revealed themselves through patterns, not promises. This is the stage where detachment no longer feels like loss. It feels like relief. You understand that closure does not come from explanations. It comes from acceptance. Their intention was never hidden in their words. It was visible in what they consistently avoided giving you. Something else becomes clear now. You did not imagine the imbalance. You did not exaggerate the distance. You did not misread the inconsistency. You were responding to reality. The reason it felt confusing was because reality was being softened by hope. Once hope steps aside, truth stands firm. And truth does not require emotional labor to maintain. It simply exists. Their presence no longer holds emotional weight because you no longer attach meaning to what is incomplete. You stop assigning value to potential and start valuing reality. At this point, you may notice how differently you move through your days. You are less reactive. More intentional. You choose where your energy goes instead of offering it automatically. This is not emotional withdrawal. This is emotional maturity. You have learned that connection should add to your life, not consume it. Their intention depended on your constant engagement. Without it, their influence dissolves naturally. You do not need distance out of anger. Awareness has already done the work. This is the quiet power you carry forward. You no longer mistake emotional intensity for emotional depth. You no longer confuse attention with intention. You know now that real connection feels steady, not suspenseful. Safe, not uncertain. This experience did not break you. It refined you. And because of that, you will never again stay where clarity is avoided and consistency is missing. What you gained here is not loss. It is discernment. And that changes everything. A different kind of strength rises when you stop trying to be understood by someone who never tried to understand you. It is not loud. It does not announce itself. It simply stands firm. You no longer feel the need to justify your feelings or soften your truth to make someone comfortable. That chapter taught you something priceless. Being emotionally available is a gift, not an obligation. And anyone who treats it casually was never meant to hold it for long. Their intention only worked while you kept doubting yourself. The moment self-respect replaced self-questioning, the balance shifted forever. You now recognize how easily emotional attachment can disguise itself as destiny when consistency is missing. The highs felt meaningful because the lows created contrast. The uncertainty kept your attention focused outward instead of inward. But once you step back, you see the pattern clearly. Nothing was moving forward. Nothing was being built. You were standing still, investing emotion into something that survived on pause. Their intention was never progress. It was access. Access to your care, your patience, your emotional depth. And access without responsibility always ends the same way, quietly and completely. What feels different now is your relationship with your own emotions. You no longer rush to fill silence. You no longer interpret distance as a challenge to fix. You let things reveal themselves as they are. And that changes how people interact with you. Those who come with genuine intention stay consistent. Those who came for emotional convenience fade naturally. This is not something you force. It happens because your standards became internal instead of reactive. You stopped asking for proof and started observing behavior. There is also a deep relief in knowing that you did not lose something rare. You released something unstable. That difference matters. You are not walking away empty-handed. You are walking away wiser. You learned how emotional imbalance feels in the body. You learned how confusion sounds in conversation. You learned how effort disappears when accountability approaches. These lessons stay with you, not as fear, but as clarity. And clarity protects without hardening the heart. This is where the story truly ends and truly begins. You are no longer the person who waits to be chosen while offering everything. You are the person who recognizes intention without explanation. Your emotional energy now moves with purpose, not hope alone. And the person who once fooled you emotionally no longer holds space in your future, only a lesson in your past. What lies ahead is not uncertainty. It is alignment. And that is something no illusion can replace.